She had nothing, no home, no family, no future. But on a freezing November morning outside one of Manhattan's most exclusive estates, she was found kneeling on the sidewalk, teaching a billionaire's daughter with nothing but broken chalk and a piece of cardboard. The girl was homeless. The daughter was worth millions. And what this billionaire did next would shatter everything you think you know about wealth, power, and redemption. Because sometimes the people we overlook on the street hold the answers to the questions we've been asking our entire lives, and sometimes the most powerful act of kindness comes from the most unexpected place. This is a story about loss, second chances, and a truth so devastating it would bring one of New York's most powerful men to his knees. Her name was Maya, and if you had passed her on the street that cold morning, you probably wouldn't have looked twice. She was 24 years old, wrapped in a donated coat 3 sizes too big, her fingers stained with chalk dust, her hair pulled back with a rubber band. But there was something about her that caught your attention if you stopped long enough to notice. It was in her eyes. They were sharp, focused, alive with purpose even though everything else about her screamed defeat. She sat cross-legged on the concrete outside the iron gates of the Thornton estate, a piece of flattened cardboard spread in front of her like a makeshift chalkboard, and kneeling beside her, completely absorbed, was a little girl in a private school uniform, worth more than most people's monthly rent. The girl's name was Lila, and she was 9 years old. She had snuck out of the mansion 20 minutes earlier, curious about the woman she'd seen from her bedroom window for the past 3 mornings. Her father had told her never to leave the property alone. Her nanny had told her the streets were dangerous. But Lila was tired of being locked behind gates, tired of tutors who treated her like a task to complete, tired of being alone in a house with 40 rooms and no one who really saw her. Maya was teaching her fractions using pebbles and chalk lines. She explained it slowly, patiently, the way you'd explain something to someone you actually cared about understanding it. Lila's eyes lit up with every word. For the first time in months, learning didn't feel like a chore. It felt like magic. And that's when the black Mercedes pulled up. The window rolled down slowly, and a man in a tailored suit leaned forward, his jaw tight, his eyes cold with the kind of authority that comes from never being questioned. His name was David Thornton, 55 years old, founder of Thornton Capital, one of the wealthiest men in New York. He had built an empire from nothing, survived market crashes, hostile takeovers, and personal tragedy, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of his daughter sitting on a dirty sidewalk with a homeless woman. His first instinct was fury. His second was fear. But then he saw something that stopped him. He saw his daughter smile, really smile. Not the polite, practiced smile she gave at charity galas or family dinners. A real one. The kind he hadn't seen since her mother died. David didn't say anything at first. He just watched. Maya didn't notice him. She was too focused on Lila, too caught up in the lesson. She drew a circle on the cardboard and divided it into quarters, explaining how you could take something whole and break it into pieces without losing its value. Lila nodded, tracing the lines with her finger, asking questions, laughing when she got something wrong. It was the most natural thing in the world, and it broke something inside David that he didn't even know was still intact. He stepped out of the car. The bodyguard moved to follow, but David raised a hand. He walked slowly toward them, his footsteps deliberate, his expression unreadable. Maya looked up and froze. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in the city knew David Thornton's face, and she knew in that instant that this was the end. She would be arrested, questioned, maybe worse. She had no right to be there, no right to speak to his daughter. But before she could stand, before she could apologize or run, David did something she never expected. He knelt down beside them. He looked at the cardboard, at the chalk drawings, at his daughter's wide, excited eyes. And then he looked at Maya. Not with anger, not with pity, with something closer to recognition. He asked her one question, just one. "Who taught you to do this?" Maya hesitated. Her throat was dry. Her hands were shaking, but she answered honestly, "I used to be a teacher." David nodded slowly, processing that. Then he looked at his daughter. "Lila, go inside. We'll talk about this later." Lila's face fell, but she obeyed. She glanced back at Maya one last time before disappearing through the gates. And then it was just the two of them, David and Maya, a billionaire and a woman with nothing. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, David spoke again. "Come back tomorrow morning. Same time. I'll pay you." Maya blinked. "I'm sorry? I'm hiring you to teach my daughter properly." She stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand. You don't even know me." David's expression didn't change. "No, but my daughter does, and that's enough for now." Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of the shelter where she'd been staying for the past 8 months, staring at the peeling paint on the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over in her mind. It didn't make sense. Men like David Thornton didn't hire homeless women off the street. They didn't take risks like that. They didn't trust people like her. But the next morning, she was back outside the gates at 7 a.m. sharp, her hands scrubbed clean, her hair tied back, wearing the only clean shirt she owned. The bodyguard was waiting for her. He didn't say anything, just opened the gate and led her up the long driveway to the main house. Inside, the mansion was everything you'd expect. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with art that probably cost more than most people would earn in a lifetime, but it felt empty, cold, like a museum, not a home. David was waiting in the study, standing by the window with his back to her. He didn't turn around when she entered. "My daughter's tutor quit last week," he said. "She's the 3rd one this year. Lila's smart, but she's difficult. She doesn't trust easily." Maya stayed silent, unsure if she was supposed to respond. David continued, "I've tried the best private tutors in the city. None of them lasted more than a few months. But yesterday, for the first time in a long time, I saw her actually care about learning. So here's the deal. You'll teach her every morning, Monday through Friday. I'll pay you $1,000 a week, plus meals. You'll have access to the library, any materials you need. But you don't talk to the press. You don't talk to anyone about this arrangement. And if I find out you're using my daughter for any reason other than teaching her, you're done. Understood?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" David finally turned to face her. His eyes were tired, haunted by something she couldn't name. "Because I don't know how to reach her anymore. And you did, in 5 minutes." He paused. "That's worth more than any degree." For the first time in months, Maya felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Purpose. She nodded. "I won't let you down." David didn't smile. "Good. Because if you do, I'll make sure you regret it." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And Maya believed him. But she also believed in herself. And more than that, she believed in Lila. Because she saw in that little girl the same thing she'd seen in dozens of students over the years, a spark, a hunger to understand the world. And she knew that if she could just protect that spark, if she could just keep it alive, everything else would follow. She had no idea how wrong she was, or how right. The first week went better than anyone expected. Maya arrived every morning at 7, and by 7:15 she and Lila were deep into lessons. They didn't use textbooks. Maya didn't believe in them. She used stories, games, real-world problems. She taught math using recipes and budgets. She taught history by asking Lila to imagine herself in different time periods, making choices, facing consequences. She taught science by taking her into the garden and examining plants, insects, the way rain collected in leaves. Lila came alive in those sessions. She asked questions no one had ever encouraged her to ask. She laughed when she made mistakes. She stayed late, begging for just one more problem, one more story. David watched from a distance, standing at the window of his office, observing the lessons from above. He didn't interrupt. He didn't interfere. But he noticed everything. He noticed how Maya never raised her voice, even when Lila got frustrated. He noticed how she listened, really listened when Lila spoke. He noticed the way his daughter looked at Maya, with trust, with admiration, with something close to love, and it scared him. Because he knew how quickly trust could be broken, and he knew how much it would destroy Lila if Maya turned out to be another person who left. By the second week, the staff started talking. The housekeeper whispered to the cook about the homeless woman teaching the little girl. The driver mentioned it to the security team. The gardener told his wife, who told her friends. And soon, the rumors reached the ears of people who had far less innocent intentions. Journalists started calling, photographers camped outside the gates. The headlines began to appear. Billionaire hires homeless woman as tutor. David Thornton's latest charity case. From street to estate, the shocking story you need to hear. David's PR team went into overdrive trying to control the narrative. His business partners called emergency meetings, questioning his judgment. His board of directors issued statements distancing themselves from his personal choices, but David didn't care. He'd spent his entire life caring what people thought, building a reputation, protecting an image. And where had it gotten him? A lonely daughter, an empty house, a life that looked perfect on paper, but felt hollow in practice. So he ignored them all. He doubled Maya's pay. He gave her a room in the guest house so she wouldn't have to commute from the shelter. He bought her clothes, books, everything she needed, not because he was trying to save her, but because she was saving his daughter, and that, to him, was worth everything. But then the letters started arriving. Plain white envelopes, no return address, dropped in the mailbox in the middle of the night. The first one was simple, just 5 words. "She's not who you think." David threw it away. The second one came 3 days later. "Ask her about the accident." He kept that one. The third one arrived a week later, and this one was different. It had a newspaper clipping attached, a headline from 4 years ago. "Teacher blamed in fatal car crash." And beneath it, a photo. A younger version of Maya, her face pale, her eyes red from crying, being led out of a courthouse. David's blood ran cold. He read the article 3 times, his hands shaking, his mind racing. It said Maya had been working at a private school in Connecticut, that she'd been driving a group of students to a field trip when her car was hit by another vehicle, that one of the passengers had died. A woman named Catherine Thornton, David's wife. And just like that, everything changed. David didn't confront Maya immediately. He needed time to think, to process, to understand. He hired a private investigator, the best money could buy, and told him to dig up everything he could find about Maya's past, every detail, every record, every witness. The investigator worked fast. Within 48 hours, he had a file 3 inches thick sitting on David's desk, and what it contained was worse than David could have imagined, because the truth wasn't simple. It never is. Maya had been a teacher at Riverside Academy, a prestigious private school where Catherine volunteered twice a week. They'd known each other, not well, but enough to smile and wave in the hallways. On the day of the accident, Maya had been driving a school van with 6 students, and Catherine as a chaperone. They were heading to a museum 2 hours away. The weather was clear, the roads were dry, everything was fine, until it wasn't. A truck ran a red light at an intersection, slamming into the side of the van at 60 miles an hour. The impact was devastating. 3 students were injured. Catherine was killed instantly. The police investigation concluded that Maya wasn't at fault. The truck driver was arrested, charged with vehicular manslaughter, sentenced to 8 years in prison. But that didn't stop the school from firing Maya. It didn't stop Catherine's family from suing her in civil court. It didn't stop the media from painting her as negligent, careless, a teacher who couldn't protect the children in her care. The lawsuit dragged on for 2 years. Maya lost everything fighting it: her savings, her apartment, her reputation. Even after she was cleared of any wrongdoing, even after the case was dismissed, no school would hire her. No one would give her a reference. Her name had been dragged through the mud so thoroughly that it didn't matter what the truth was. She was guilty in the court of public opinion. And so she ended up on the streets, broken, alone, forgotten. David read every page of the report, every witness statement, every court transcript, and by the end, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame, because he remembered the accident. He remembered the funeral. He remembered the anger, the grief, the desperate need to blame someone. And he remembered hearing Maya's name. He remembered his lawyers telling him she'd been driving. He remembered nodding when they suggested suing her. He remembered signing the papers without reading them, trusting that justice would be served. But justice hadn't been served. Revenge had, and it had destroyed an innocent woman's life. David had never followed up on the case. He'd been too consumed by his own pain, his own loss. He'd let his lawyers handle everything, and when they told him the case was settled, he'd moved on. He'd never known that Maya had been cleared. He'd never known that she'd lost everything. He'd never known that the woman now teaching his daughter was the same woman his family had helped destroy. And now she was here, in his house, with his daughter, teaching, laughing, living, as if none of it had happened. David sat in his office for hours that night, staring at the file, trying to figure out what to do. Part of him wanted to fire her immediately, to protect himself, to protect Lila from the inevitable fallout when the truth came out. But another part of him, a quieter part, whispered something different. What if she deserves this? What if this is her second chance? What if you owe her this? He didn't sleep that night. And when morning came, he still didn't have an answer, but he knew he couldn't avoid her forever. So he called her into his study. Maya walked in with a smile, completely unaware of what was coming. She was holding a book Lila had asked to borrow, chatting about how well the lessons were going, how excited Lila was about their next project. David let her talk. He waited until she was done. Then he placed the file on the desk between them. "I know who you are," he said quietly. Maya's smile faded. Her eyes dropped to the file. And in that moment, David saw everything: the fear, the shame, the resignation of someone who'd been waiting for this moment for 4 years. She didn't try to defend herself. She didn't make excuses. She just nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "I was going to tell you. I didn't know how." David's jaw tightened. "You were in the car that killed my wife." "Yes." "And you didn't think I had a right to know that before I let you into my home? Before I let you near my daughter?" Maya's hands were shaking. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "I didn't know it was your wife, not at first. I didn't make the connection until I saw her picture in your office. And by then, Lila was already starting to trust me. I didn't want to take that away from her." David slammed his hand on the desk. "That wasn't your decision to make." Maya flinched but didn't back down. "You're right. It wasn't. I should have told you. I'm sorry." The silence that followed was suffocating. David stood up, pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw her out. He wanted to hate her. But he couldn't, because everything in that file pointed to one undeniable truth: she was innocent, and his family had ruined her anyway. Finally, he stopped pacing and looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, he saw her not as the woman who'd been in the car, but as a person who'd been carrying the weight of that day for just as long as he had. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "After everything, why didn't you run when you realized who I was?" Maya's voice cracked. "Because I wanted to make it right. I couldn't save your wife. But I thought, maybe I could help your daughter. Maybe I could do something good. Something that mattered." David's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that nothing she did would ever bring Catherine back. that she had no right to be here. But he couldn't. Because deep down he knew Lila needed her. And maybe, in some twisted way, he needed her too. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said finally. Maya nodded. "I don't expect you to. But I'm not going to fire you, not yet. Lila needs stability, and for whatever reason, you give her that. So we're going to continue, for now. But if I find out you've lied about anything else, if you do anything to hurt her, I will end you. Do you understand?" Maya wiped her eyes. "I understand." And that's how they left it. An uneasy truce built on grief, guilt, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, broken people could help each other heal. The weeks that followed were tense. David kept his distance from Maya, watching her with a scrutiny that bordered on paranoia. He monitored every lesson, every conversation, every interaction with Lila. He waited for her to slip, to reveal some hidden agenda, to prove that his instincts were right and she couldn't be trusted. But she never did. If anything, she became even more dedicated. She stayed late, preparing lessons. She researched topics Lila was interested in, tailoring every session to her curiosity. She celebrated Lila's successes and patiently worked through her frustrations. And slowly, despite everything, David began to see something he hadn't expected. Maya wasn't just teaching his daughter. She was giving her something David had failed to provide. Attention, encouragement, the feeling that she mattered. Lila blossomed under Maya's guidance. Her grades improved. Her confidence grew. She started speaking up at family dinners, sharing things she'd learned, asking questions that surprised everyone. And for the first time since Catherine's death, David saw glimpses of the daughter he used to know. The one who laughed easily, the one who believed the world was full of possibilities, but the outside world wasn't so forgiving. The media frenzy only grew. Investigative journalists started digging into Maya's past, uncovering the accident, the lawsuit, the connection to Catherine. The headlines exploded. "Billionaire unknowingly hires woman involved in wife's death." "Twisted fate. Teacher who lost everything returns to haunt Thornton family." Is this revenge or redemption? The story went viral. Talk shows debated it. Social media erupted with opinions. Some people called David a saint for giving Maya a second chance. Others called him a fool for endangering his daughter. The hate mail started pouring in. Death threats, accusations, demands that he fire Maya immediately. David's business partners issued ultimatums. His board scheduled an emergency vote to remove him as CEO. His lawyers warned him that keeping Maya employed could open him up to lawsuits, scandals, financial ruin. And through it all, David had to make a choice: protect his reputation, his company, his comfortable life, or protect the woman who was helping his daughter heal. The decision should have been easy, but it wasn't. Because somewhere along the way, David had started to see Maya differently, not as the woman in the car, not as a charity case, but as someone who understood loss in a way no one else in his life did. One night after Lila had gone to bed, David found Maya sitting in the garden, staring at the stars. She looked exhausted, worn down by the weight of everything. He sat down beside her without saying anything. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Maya spoke. "You should fire me. For Lila's sake. This is only going to get worse." David didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. "Do you regret it? Coming here?" Maya thought about that. "No. Even with everything that's happened, I don't regret it. Because Lila is the first thing that's made me feel like myself again. Like I matter." David nodded slowly. Catherine used to say that teaching was the most important job in the world, that shaping a child's mind was more valuable than any amount of money. Maya's breath caught. "She said that?" "All the time. She believed it, and I think she would have liked you." That broke something in Maya. She started crying, quiet sobs that shook her whole body. And David, for the first time in 4 years, reached out and put a hand on her shoulder. Not as an employer, not as a man haunted by his wife's death, but as someone who understood what it meant to carry impossible grief. They didn't talk much after that, but something shifted between them. An understanding. A recognition that they were both trying to survive the same tragedy from different sides. And maybe, just maybe, they could help each other do it. The next morning, David called a press conference. His PR team begged him not to. His lawyers threatened to quit. His board promised to force him out. But David didn't care anymore. He stood in front of dozens of cameras and reporters and told the truth. He told them about the accident, about the lawsuit, about how his family had destroyed an innocent woman's life. He told them that Maya had been cleared of any wrongdoing, that she'd lost everything because of a lie the media had perpetuated. And he told them that she was the best teacher his daughter had ever had, that she was kind, patient, brilliant, that she deserved a second chance, that everyone did. The room erupted in questions, but David didn't take any of them. He simply walked off the stage, got in his car, and drove home. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Half the board resigned. Several investors pulled their funding. Protesters gathered outside his office. But something else happened too. Thousands of people reached out in support. Former students of Maya's came forward, sharing stories of how she'd changed their lives. Teachers across the country spoke up about the impossible standards they were held to. Parents thanked David for showing that forgiveness was possible. And slowly, the narrative began to shift. 3 months later, David made another announcement. He was stepping down as CEO of Thornton Capital to start a new venture. A foundation dedicated to providing second chances to people who'd been unfairly destroyed by the justice system, the media, or public opinion. The first person he hired to run it was Maya. She didn't accept right away. She told him she didn't deserve it, that she wasn't qualified, that people would never stop seeing her as the woman in the car. But David looked her in the eye and said something that changed everything. "Catherine didn't die because of you. She died because of a drunk driver who ran a red light. And for 4 years, I let my grief turn you into a villain because it was easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things just happen. I can't give you back what you lost, but I can give you a future, and I think that's what Catherine would have wanted." Maya accepted. The foundation launched 6 months later. It provided legal aid, job training, housing assistance, and mental health support to people who'd been wrongly accused or unfairly judged. Within the first year, they helped over 200 people rebuild their lives, and Maya, who'd once had nothing, became the face of a movement. She spoke at conferences. She testified before Congress. She appeared on talk shows, not as a victim, but as an advocate. And through it all, she never stopped teaching. She still tutored Lila twice a week. They'd meet at a coffee shop now, working through math problems and book reports over lattes and muffins. Lila was 14 now, confident, compassionate, determined to make a difference in the world. She told people her dream was to be a teacher, just like Maya. David never remarried. He never tried to. But he and Maya became close friends, bonded by shared loss and the fragile hope they'd built together. On the anniversary of Catherine's death, they visited her grave together. They didn't say much. They just stood there, letting the silence speak for them. And when they left, Maya turned to David and said something he'd never forget. "I don't think I saved you. I think we saved each other." David smiled. It was small, but it was real. "Yeah, I think you're right." As they walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the cemetery. And for the first time in years, David felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because he'd learned to carry it differently, with help, with grace, with the understanding that sometimes the people we think we're saving are actually the ones saving us. So here's the question. If you were in David's position, could you have done what he did? Could you have looked past your own pain to see someone else's? Could you have given a second chance to the person you blamed for your greatest loss? And if you were Maya, could you have walked back into the life of the man whose family destroyed you? Could you have faced that fear, that judgment, that risk, just for the chance to matter again? These aren't easy questions, but they're the ones that define us. Because in the end, this story isn't about a billionaire or a homeless woman. It's about what happens when we choose empathy over anger, forgiveness over revenge, hope over despair. It's about recognizing that everyone we meet is fighting battles we know nothing about, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply see each other, really see each other, not as victims or villains, not as success stories or cautionary tales, but as human beings trying to survive this messy, complicated, beautiful life. And maybe, if we're lucky, we find someone who helps us do it. Someone who sees us when we're invisible. Someone who believes in us when we've stopped believing in ourselves. Someone who reminds us that no matter how far we fall, redemption is always possible, if we're brave enough to reach for it. Now tell me, where are you watching this from? And what would you have done if you were David? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that broken people can still do beautiful things, then share it. Because someone out there needs to hear it. Someone is sitting in their own darkness right now, wondering if they'll ever matter again. And maybe, just maybe, this story will be the light that guides them home. Thank you for watching. And remember, the world is full of second chances. We just have to be willing to give them.